life is a challenge. That's why we have scriptures. Staying
Amen.
focused. You stay focused on today is worth it no matter what. Like there's a reward for those who stay the path and keep moving forward in a faith-filled way.
Welcome to the Holderman Homes podcast. I'm your host, Raven Holderman, where we talk heaven, health, and home.
Today, everybody, I have Anna Panza from Our Faith-Filled Home on IG. She is known for specifically kind of her process orientation. She's very intentional with routines, habits, and decluttering, which I am totally a declutter bug. I am that girl. That's me all day long. I try to keep very minimalist. That's just the season we're in. So, hi. I just wanted to invite you on because I love that idea of talking about intentional homemaking processing, not just the process itself, but finding value in the process.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that, especially as mothers in particular, we have to figure out how to value running a household because it's a shift. And, you know, your IG has kind of taken off. So obviously I think there's something to that. I think that there's credibility there. Like you're doing something that other moms can really relate to, other wives can really relate to.
Hey guys, Future Raven jumping in here just to remind you to like, subscribe, please leave a review. Whether you want to write a review or leave some stars, it really does help us out. We're available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. So check us out there. All right, back to your content.
I'm going to start off with a real light question because I just got to know. How did you start with a matcha routine in the mornings?
I actually identified. So a lot of the components of what I talk about and how I share things and what I'm passionate about stems from a natural leaning towards anxiousness. And what I found was, when I started reworking and trying, I feel like God designed all of us not to live in anxiety. We're told that. And so I started to seek out the different ways that I could fix my anxiety. And over the years, I've had to adapt and change. But what I found was that when I had the coffee in my system, my anxiety shot through the roof. And as I learned more about time management and as I learned more about how to produce my day in a way that was going to be more efficient, I found that I was more aware that when I had the coffee, I got anxious. I stopped the coffee, which was horrible. I had withdrawal effect. And I needed something else that was more like a ritual. And what I found when I had the matcha is that I was more alert and focused. So I'm very passionate about matcha, and it's just become kind of a thing. And there's something about matcha and like making it and finding the different grades of matcha. It makes me feel better. So have you tried matcha yourself?
So I'm pregnant right now, and there's something about my first trimester in pregnancy, both my pregnancies, I absolutely lost my taste for coffee for the first trimester. My body was just horribly like, no coffee, absolutely not. We're not doing it. Cold turkey, we're done for the first trimester. So I tried instead substituting matcha every now and then, as a little treat drink. But I like your little stories because you're talking, but you're like, you got this little whisk, you're getting fancy with it.
It's become a thing, and I actually have become kind of a matcha snob in that I won't drink matcha other places because they sweeten their mix. And then they'll add whatever milk they have, which has sweetener, and you can't get it unsweetened and then adjust the sweetness because it's already created. So it's very rare that you find a coffee house that does matcha, I say, like the right way.
Okay. That is interesting. Yeah, I didn't mind the matcha latte, but I like sweet drinks, so that's okay. I even added a little cold foam on top.
Mm-hmm.
I know my audience. I know me.
It's really fun. That's why we're drawn to coffee too, as moms in our culture. We're drawn to kind of this nostalgic, like, I'm gonna go get a coffee and holding it in your hand and the flavors, and there's a feeling that you get, and I reproduce that feeling with matcha in my life. So.
It is nice to have that little semblance of routine in the morning, like, just this little thing for me as we start the day. Yeah. So, well, I'm going to jump into our next question, though, which is slightly more serious than the matcha. So, what keeps your faith grounded when you're running your household?
So I actually look at it from my home is from a biblical perspective. And a lot of what I am passionate about or what I talk about all the time in routines and establishing or maintaining a home comes from there in Galatians 6. We talk about um, kind of the what you plant, you will harvest. And so as you tend to what you plant, you will receive in a harvest. And the Holy Spirit will give back type of thing. So I have to drive back into the little things, the little seeds I plant, the way I harvest them, and that's what keeps me focused because not every day is easy. I have three little ones under the age of 6, so
Goodness.
it's a challenge. Like life is a challenge. That's why we have scriptures. Staying
Amen.
focused. You stay focused on today is worth it no matter what. Like there's a reward for those who stay the path and keep moving forward in a faith-filled way. And that's just kind of what keeps me going, even on the hard days. Most days are hard. There's more hard, challenging days than there are the easy days. And I think
Hmm.
if you're not careful, you can look around and see everybody's highlight reel and think, oh, everybody has it so much easier than me. This is so hard. But it's actually life is challenging to refine you.
So I really like how you said that the like every day is worth it. Every day is the planting of the seed for tomorrow. And I talk about the planting of the seed sometimes on my Instagram, specifically in regards to emotional health.
Hmm.
But I really like how you take that idea of the planting the seed into the household aspect as well. Because I'm a very routine driven person, but that doesn't mean all my routines are serving me. And
Hmm.
so I like how you're putting that very accurately of, today has to serve tomorrow. We have to be doing the work now, planting the seed in order to continue to harvest in the future. You have to have the eye forward. So as we're talking about this, the household routine, I've seen your Instagram, so I know that you time block.
Hmm.
My audience might not know what that is. And I kind of want you to just tell me a little bit of how you navigate your day with your kids using time blocking.
Okay. So, time blocking, let's start from the beginning. If it's very unfamiliar to someone, time blocking in a summarized version is taking bits and pieces of the day, whether it's 30, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, and you have focused intention. And I think it's very interesting that as moms, we come into the role without, we don't have much training in moving forward, in managing our days, in managing our time. When you're in your professional career, you absolutely do.
Right.
Either you have a boss that has you to a schedule, you have a clock in time, you have a clock out time, whatever it might be. And then you get into motherhood. And I think that could be what causes a lot of the anxiety and the dread in motherhood is we don't actually look at it as a job and as something to steward. So through a series of process of elimination, I found that if I stuck to a schedule in my day, I was more effective. Thus, my anxiety decreased. And it's actually research that people that have a time structure to their day, a schedule, an expectation, a routine, they have a decreased amount of depression and anxiety. It's because you are moving through your day in an effective way and you're not leaving it to chance. That's what got really frustrating for me is leaving everything to chance. So how I work this in time blocking is I look at my day. Sometimes I work forward from where I'm at in the time and I will block out what needs to be done. Breakfast time is an hour and a half on a really good day. That's my goal. Our family values to slow down time for breakfast and devotional. So I block out that time. If it's a walk or a workout, homeschooling we block in. It's an hour, hour and a half. I do a lot of time blocking. My first time block ever was a time block at the end of the day when I got the text from my husband that he was packing up and on his way home. I created a time block of 20 minutes from that time and I worked to tidy our space, to get the dishes out of the sink, to put toys away that were out, to pick up the socks or whatever it is on the floor. you're familiar with your day kind of creates a little bit of chaos.
Always.
And I saw how effective it was. But the key to making time blocking work is that you have to be focused on the time block because you lose your efficiency by up to 40% if you're trying to do multitasking. It doesn't work. Your brain and your mind are, as much as we're taught in culture that multitasking is what moms do, it's actually robbing you of efficiency, and it's robbing you of that feeling at the end of the day of feeling like I accomplished this, this, and this because you spent your day multitasking. Like it's like that jack of all trades. Like jack of all trades is a master of none. That's time for us as
Right.
moms. If you are trying to be I'm trying to pay the bills while I'm washing the dishes, while I'm listening to a podcast, you can make a mistake paying the bills. You're not absorbing that podcast you're listening to. But if you're like trying to like homeschool your kids and vacuum and do the dishes and mop the floor, it's just not very effective with the addition of the interruption that comes from being a mom. It's just a natural thing.
So my follow up to that would be is like you have a child who's more of that one on one time kind of child, and you're trying to time block.
Mm-hmm.
How are you navigating the child in that time block in order to accomplish the thing that you've put that time block as? So, say something more work oriented, maybe, where you need a little bit of you time.
So I'm very big on having jobs for little ones. We've actually had a job for each child when they turn 2 and 3. My 3-year-old is in charge of vacuuming. We actually take apart
Oh,
our cordless vacuum and make it into a mini one. We make it in like this like foot and a half for him, and his job is to vacuum while we do this cleanup session for when my husband comes home. He's in charge of vacuuming. Sometimes he vacuums a sock, but we're learning.
okay.
And my 6-year-old has a task that he got when he was 6, and he's in charge of dishwasher while we clean up from breakfast or get breakfast going. It is true, like little kids aren't really capable of being very independent. So I feel like the best route to navigate that is to include them. Like a little, like in our garden analogies, we talk in our house of being like a little tomato plant. So you are stuck to me, I'm the cage, and we're going together. We're working together. It's like a positive way of being like, stay right here with me while we work through this.
Okay.
And honestly, like we work together. That's how they learn. They have real tools. I'm not afraid of a glass getting broken or because I have help. My 6-year-old knows how to like take the knives out, put them on the counter. We've had broken things. It's just things. I also, another thing that I do is I add 15 minutes on my ideal time block. So
Okay.
if let's say
That's
I'm
good.
gonna like do like a 45-minute walk, that's my goal for that time frame. It's actually an hour block in my calendar because I know it's going to take 15 minutes to get our shoes on,
Mm-hmm.
figure out what we're going to take with us on the walk. Herding children is like herding cats sometimes. I call it like whack-a-mole. Like I get one ready for the walk and the other one's over there, and you just kind of herd them back in. But I do add buffer blocks
Okay.
to our time block. And I also don't hold it as, despite how intense it sounds, like some people this may overwhelm, right? Like the idea of a schedule for their day, but it's actually like no one is holding me to it, just myself. It's
Right.
just to give you a guide. And what it actually does is we're more drawn to creating to-do lists of like 15 things or 20 things, and you really don't have the hours in the day to get 20 things done like that. So a lot of times what's happening is we're creating these to-do lists. They're way too big for what we actually have to accomplish. It happened to us yesterday. We had somewhere to be at a certain time. And by working backwards in my time block, so the time I had to leave to go, I worked backwards. And there were things I wasn't going to get the floors mopped before we left. I wasn't going to get the breakfast dishes done before we left. But there were certain things that I plugged into our time block from where we were at then when we got home, I was able to start to focus on those other things. So sometimes you do have to work backwards in order to see what you can actually fit into. We're very ambitious to think that we can fit in a 2 hour time block that you can fit in 5 hours worth of work. I
It's true.
And some days I just have to let some things go there. We have priorities, of course. Priorities are sitting for meals together. Priority
Right.
is learning together. We homeschool as a family. We prioritize a lot of different things. And then if the floors or the cleaning of the bathtub doesn't get into that day, that's okay because we have the priority time blocks. And then everything else you learn too. Like yesterday, I knew ideally I would have loved to have our floors done before we left. It just wasn't going to happen based off of what time we had to leave and what we had to accomplish. That was a priority.
I like two things there. I really like how you say we have priority time blocks, things that maybe are more consistent, like the
Hmm.
meals together. We always do dinner together at my house, right?
Hmm.
Like that's something that we can always work in. I always do breakfast, and that's our time together. But then there might be other things that shift around in the day that aren't necessarily a priority time block.
Hmm.
And I do like that. It gives you a little bit of flexibility in that. We're not going so into the time blocking that we're creating this legalism in our household that's hard to maintain.
Right.
And when you do have things that, fall off the bandwagon that day that you can't get to, that maybe you were a little bit overly ambitious with, it's that idea of giving yourself grace for it
Yeah.
and just accepting that, not every day is going to hit every mark.
Hmm.
So I do like that. And even going a little bit further back in the conversation, the idea of including your child as much as possible in what you can, because I've found that to be very true with her, as she's a little bit of a clinger. If I can sit down with my work pad and put one right next to her, that's helpful.
Hmm.
Or when I'm unloading the dishwasher, she has her own cabinet to put away her dishes to. Or she'll put away the silverware, which means
Hmm.
they're everywhere in the silverware drawer, but they're there and she did
Hmm.
it. And she gets to be included in ways that keep me on track. So I do like that. The other thing I would say, the other component to time blocking as far as household management goes is, in my opinion, decluttering.
Hmm.
So I got to ask, do you declutter your kids' toys? Do you include them in that? Do you have any mom guilt about it?
So I'm very passionate about a clutter-free home.
Yes, amen.
And the reason why is because I started to realize how much time I was losing to management of things. And I started to see everything in my home, whether it was sentimental, special, not a gift, everything in my home, I started seeing through the lens of my time. Everything has to be picked up,
Yeah.
to dust, to clean, to put away. It has to have a home. If it doesn't have a home, that's what creates this feeling of anxiety when you walk into your house and you're feeling overwhelmed. So I am unapologetic about how much I declutter. It's kind of a joke in our home. My husband will say, like, do we still have the whatever it is, or did you get rid of that?
Mine too.
And I keep, I'm very intentional. One thing in, usually, like if we get something new, he loves gadgets and things. There are some battles I don't win, of course, but
Right.
here's how I see. I read a book that was life changing. It's called Simplicity Parenting by Kim John Payne, I believe it is. I've read it 3 times, and it basically talks about how kids don't need the amount of toys and all these things that we fill their life with.
Mm-hmm.
We're actually taking away from them their ability to creatively think. We're taking away their ability to use their imagination by we're pre-deciding for them what they'll like. That was the first thing that I was like, all right, my son, my 6 year old, this is when we started decluttering. My middle son wasn't even born yet. I realized how much I was overwhelming him by having
Mm.
everything in my home. And I was also holding on to things out of guilt. I was holding on to things that
Okay.
maybe someone gave us, and I felt like they lived in another state, and I was afraid that they were going to come over one day and ask where that toy was. Silly things like that. So the first initial declutter, I had guilt. I was worried that my son might ask for something and then I would say I got rid of it. I didn't know how that was going to go. And over the years, there have been things that he has asked. Whatever happened to that? I don't even know what toy it is. And I'm just very honest with him. We gave it to someone that could use it. I try not to hide things. We're very like upfront with we can't keep everything. We are not
Mm-hmm.
expected to keep everything, and we don't really have the space or the capacity to keep everything. And I feel like having those conversations, even when he was 3 years old, prepared us for now. He just understands. It's the culture of our home. The culture of our home is to let go of things. We do a lot of thrift store shopping as well. So when we're bringing things into the house, it's okay if it's temporary. I mean, it's okay if we've outgrown something. I get asked often if I regret things that I've gotten rid of, and there's maybe I could count on one hand some things that I think back on, but that's as far as it goes. I think back on that item. I'm like, oh man, why did I do that? And then that's it. Like my life still goes on, my kids' life still goes on. I have learned what they love. So we have magnet tiles in our home. Are you familiar with what they are?
That is on my Christmas list for her
Okay.
this season,
Okay.
actually. She has blocks that she likes. And that's one
hmm
of the things I was going to mention is I'd rather limit the amount of toys to
hmm
ones that are more interactive like that.
hmm So we had Mega Block Legos, like the big chunky Legos. We had regular Legos, which we have not gotten rid of. We had Lincoln Logs, we had colorful wood blocks, and regular wood tone wood blocks. And then I got Magnetiles. I was resistant for a very long time because I saw them as expensive. When my kids started using them, they were able to do them together, which was awesome, but they were growing with them and they were more sturdy than the wood blocks. But now my
Mm-hmm.
son will create towers where he has to stand on a chair and get them all connected because the magnet tiles are so much sturdier than any of the other blocks that we have. So I observed it for a while. I put the other blocks away. So they went, and I just started building a magnet tile collection, which has a home. It's easier to tidy. That's another thing. We expect kids to go clean something, go clean the playroom, go clean where you were playing, and then they don't even have an understanding of where those things go. That's very overwhelming
Mm.
for them. And I want to help create and steward in them the gift of organization. And so I saw this as an opportunity of like, okay, because we don't have 50 different block options, so they know where it goes. And they go in their home, they get tucked away. When we clean up, we clean up. We're not like trying to like shove things in a closet. And we're not minimalist by any means. Um, we're
I kind
not
of
like
am.
like we're just like holidays. The holidays are coming,
That's my
and I
next
know that
question.
that becomes very stressful for people because on multifacets. I've seen it from people where I cause their worry a little bit because they're not sure what to get my kids, or I cause a worry because I'm like, oh man, what are people going to get them? And so one, I've gotten rid of that. I can't control what people are going to get my kids. I think it's a gift that they want to give them. The value is in the gift exchange. The person gets to give a gift to my child. They get to see the reaction. They get to love them. They get to give. That is what a gift is for. From that point forward, our home gets to decide. Our home has different values. Our home has different seasons. Some things get put away for an extended period of time. Some things are better serving other families or blessing other families or the church or whatever it is. So I try to declutter before the holidays come, mainly to take inventory of what we have. But I also try to create a list in my phone because what I've learned is that people want to get something for my kids that they need or want. They don't want to just spend their money on something that's silly. So if people ask, I have something in my phone that I know where to go and say, yeah, Isaiah would actually like some of his own fancy markers. And I know exactly what, like throughout the year. And that helps the other person. My grandma just asked me yesterday, what can she get the boys? And I had a list and I knew exactly what I think they would enjoy and what I think she would enjoy giving them as well.
Two birds of a feather. I created a whole spreadsheet, which was not much,
Mm-hmm.
of links to
Mm-hmm.
gifts that I was like, there's a little toy list, there's a little like activities list if you want to gift activities, there's little clothes maybe or books, and like, okay, here it is. And if you want to get something not on the list, that's fine. Clothes and books are good options.
Hey guys, just jumping in again to let you know as we approach the holidays that I actually have a list going. I know not all of us are big gifters, myself included. So I like to keep things simple for myself and simple for you. It's about 5 items per category. I've got books on there, gifts for toddlers, men, and women. Go check it out through my bio link or the link in the description below.
I think we put so much pressure on ourselves to like I I felt criticism before too in my own life of like, oh, she gets rid of everything. I don't get rid of everything. I absolutely
I get
don't.
that a lot.
I am just very mindful in the health of my children and their space. And we like as humans, we can't keep everything. And if we're all honest, the rate that we are consuming as a culture, it is more than we ever have before. And that's something that this book, this Simplicity Parenting book, was so eye-opening. And so,
Mm-hmm.
experience gifts are something I'm always for. I know that not everybody loves that idea. I have some gift givers in our life that they want to wrap something, they want to watch them open it.
Yeah, I have those too.
They want that. And so I do my best to give them options and then I just let it be. And then over time, if we outgrow something or we find a better fit, then we just move forward at that time. I try not to worry about it. I used to let it stress me out because I had done so much work to declutter that I was like, oh, what if
Mm,
someone messes this up? But no one can mess up the culture of your home. You get to decide.
I like
You get to
that.
decide my 4 walls are mine. And if something wants to go to someone else's house and stay there, that's cool too. I'm not like,
For me, it goes back to boundaries because your
mm-hmm,
house has to have boundaries the same way your relationships have to have boundaries. So decluttering is kind of the boundary keeper of your household, in my
mm-hmm,
opinion. That's
mm-hmm,
how I would look at it. And there are times when, maybe someone got something for me that I was like, years later or whatever, I was like, this was a great gift. It was very sentimental. Would you like it back?
mm-hmm,
I enjoyed it for the season and I'm out of that season. So I'm going to give you first dibs if you want to come and have it back because I know that it meant a lot for you to give it. And I want to give you the opportunity to have it again, but I am done with it.
mm-hmm,
So, and that sometimes I've been surprised because the answer is yes. They
mm-hmm,
actually do want it back. Like, oh, well, thank you for thinking of me first. Yes, I would like to take that back in. And then other times you're like, no, it's okay. So sometimes that's helpful too, as far as like the keeping things out of guilt
mm-hmm,
reasoning, which I'm not fond of. I started decluttering before I had kids. And it was because I came from a household that kept everything, like
mm-hmm,
very
us too.
borderline hoarder. And when I moved out of there, just a few years after that, I was like, I can't, I
Mm-hmm,
can't do it. I can't do it. I want to be so disconnected from the stuff,
mm-hmm,
which actually, when I started really reading my Bible, it's very biblical. Actually, we're not supposed to overvalue the treasures on earth.
mm-hmm,
Like they're only here for a season, so we don't need to take the stuff in our house too seriously.
mm-hmm. Yeah. I heard it said once that one of the greatest gifts we can give our children is not having to make those hard decisions. Like, meaning, I grew up in a house where we kept everything. We had helped my mom consolidate her house down, and there were rooms of just things that we
Mm-hmm.
had to go through. And not only did we have to go through them, it costs money to dispose of things that no one wants. People think a lot of times like, oh, I'll just donate it or I'll just sell it. One, not everybody wants your stuff. Number two, donating things that a thrift store can't use actually costs them money in the long run. And I don't want to pass along that burden to them. I don't think that's fair. So when you have something that you're donating and it's actually like broken or missing pieces, and it just feels easier to donate it because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to accept that it's trash, it actually costs that institution more money. And
It's true.
I look at my things as decisions. And we make it's
Yes.
like upwards of like 30,000 decisions a day that we don't realize we're having to decide. And I wonder how much of that is like, I feel like moms would make more decisions. I feel like I make decisions for my three little humans plus myself. So I don't know,
Yes.
like, where is this 30,000 coming from? But when I heard that too, I'm like, we all have something in our home that we look at or have looked at, and all it does is remind us of uh, it's like a dread feeling or like a negative feeling, and you have to figure out how to manage it. It's just like that seems like a lot of burden. So the less that I have, the more I felt like a freedom open up. And it takes
Mm-hmm.
me kind of back into like one of the time blocks that I tried to incorporate in our home is playtime, because I know that through my productivity, I could easily miss that one-on-one time with my kids. So I will actually time block playtime or play baseball or whatever it is. That also helps when we're like, when are we gonna do? And like, oh, in like an hour after I'm done with this, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna do an hour and a half of painting. And that actually helps
Oh.
give kids like okay, cool. Like she's not just gonna blow me off for the rest of the day. But creating the time block for playtime is easier when I don't have a bunch of stuff to manage. I used to have a bookshelf before I got into this passion. I had two bookshelves in our home that had pictures and knickknacks and all kinds of stuff. When it came time to clean it, that takes so much time to take every piece off, dust the pieces, and put it back. And I started looking at my time of like, I just spent 30 minutes doing that. I could be doing 30 minutes of watercolors with my kid. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just didn't seem like it fit for me. I have this like goal to create a home that's curated on things that we love. And if we don't love it, if it doesn't serve a purpose, we really evaluate it to see what it's doing there. And 9 times out of 10, it will get passed on. Or I think it also starts with our personal decisions of bringing things in. I don't buy toys for
Mm-hmm.
my kids just for the sake of buying toys. We don't do like the little advent. Like, I choose to try to find consumable little
Yes.
things if I can. So I think that it starts with our decisions because you could declutter all day long, but if you keep bringing it in, you're always going to be on a hamster wheel of trying to get a hold of your space. So we have to be honest with what we're bringing in and what purpose it serves if we're just shopping to shop.
I mean, honestly, moms are the culture keepers of the house.
Mm-hmm.
It really goes back to that of what you were talking about. Like we have to control the culture. We have to, and the idea of teaching even our kids at a young age what it means to let go, I
Mm-hmm.
think is wise, really. So we've already kind of touched on what was my next question about, handling the holidays and the inventory. But my other part of that is how do you personally keep the focus on Christ during the holiday season with your family and your kids?
So we choose to, as a family, we just focus on the nativity story. That is our focus. I've actually decided this year that I won't be going out and buying a new Advent study. I think there's some beautiful ones out there, but I just feel like as a family, we are going to stick to a devotional book that we already have and then create conversation. I try to be very intentional with what we buy for Christmas morning. We don't open gifts until we've read a nativity story, whether it's from the Bible. It depends on our attention
I
span.
like
This year,
that.
my 3-year-old is a little bit more capable of focusing with us more than in the years past. We've done some beautiful picture books to kind of help that, but we do not open gifts until we've done that part first. And I know that I had this conversation with someone the other day. In our culture, it seems so interesting to me that we fill this time in our life, this next 30 days, we just fill it so much with a lot of things, thinking that we're making memories for our kids. And then as moms, we get to the
Mm.
end of the season and we're like, did you even get the opportunity to enjoy the moments with your kids? So I think that writing out, we sat down the other day, we wrote out all the things that my kids would like to do. I have a 6-year-old, he can tell me what he wants, right? He wants to
My
make
2-year-old can
cookies.
tell me too.
And that's where I'm like, let them see what's in their mind. Their little movie picture in their mind is going to tell you what they value for the memories. And so we just wrote this little list, and then it was on a blank December calendar. I flipped that over. I plugged in the things that I know we have to do. We have a lot of birthdays. My mom's birthday, my dad's birthday. So I plugged those dates in. Christmas Eve, when we're going to my grandma's house, and then I looked at it. I'm like, okay, how can I create space so that we're not rushing around for 30 days? So I think it's just plan before, like with anything. You are going to feel so much more relief if you kind of have an idea going in what you actually want to do. It makes those no's a lot easier too. Like,
Mm.
no, not this year. And we don't, don't say yes just for the sake of saying yes. But I just, um, we have some movies that we watch that are nativity based. It used to be called the
Okay.
Three Wise Men. But recently, I think the title changed. It's like, it's from the makers of Veggie Tales,
Oh,
and
okay.
it's a very short little film, and I like that movie. There's the star with the little donkey. I like that one. And then I have the picture books that we have are not decluttered because I think there's so many beautiful picture books, and we just read. We read and we talk about it and we reenact if we can.
We have so many books. Yeah. Well, specifically kids' books. I'll declutter mine, but with her books, I
Hmm.
tend to hold on to those because we'll bring up the whole basket and read them all
Hmm. Yeah,
in one sitting. And she loves that.
they love that.
Um, yeah, I like the idea of doing activities specifically before you get to the Christmas presents. And what you're talking about, like the doing is often more memorable than the having.
Hmm.
Like me and my sister both fondly remember putting up the tree every year and doing the lights and putting on the ornaments, and our whole family would be listening to Christmas music and having the hot chocolate, and we remember that more than I think any gift we ever got.
Hmm.
Was that tradition of having a day where we just did that as a family. Technically, you could look at that as chores. You have to lug out the tree from the attic and get everything on there and weave all the lights, but it didn't feel like that. It felt
Hmm.
like family time together, and it felt traditional. Every family's going to have slightly different traditions, but I think the best way to include Christ into Christmas is to do things traditionally, like nativity, and just really give them that value repeatedly every year so they
Hmm.
look forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned like the music, even like we have a playlist that I plan on sharing that is worship to Jesus Christmas music. So I've
Okay.
actually curated a playlist for Christmas, hundreds of songs, because there's a lot of beautiful music that is for Christmas time from a Christian perspective. That's Jesus focused. That's almost like an act of worship with Christmas music. That's what we'll play during Christmas time. Just because I feel like we can get it. You don't have to sit down all the time and read a book. Just flipping on a playlist like that, where every
Mm-hmm.
song is about Jesus, is helping your little ones realize the reason for the season. And it's just kind of a subtle place in the background, and you don't have to work. Like I don't pick my kids. It's not to say that we don't do other Christmas songs, but that playlist is what we play. And then when they have a special request, then we'll go and we'll find it and we'll listen. But for the bulk of the season, it is a Christmas playlist that is worship music and Christ-centered Christmas music.
I really like that. My daughter really likes worship.
Hmm.
And in fact, I had this little tile and we were naming off letters of the alphabet, and I get to W and I say whale and she says worship. I'm like, you've got your priorities right, kiddo. Well, I know we got to wrap up soon, so I'm just going to ask, do you have any projects that you want to shout out?
I have, I just recently shared a free guide that has 6 of the most common unproductive habits. And I created it so that we could get a handle on our habits and where our time is going. A lot of moms, I hear the phone and the mindless scrolling is a struggle for them and they lose time. So I put together 6 very common habits that we can struggle with and how to fix them. At the beginning of the year, I will have a more complete how to create micro habits guide that will walk you through exactly how to create a micro habit, how to time block, how to do all of those things. But that free guide is just a gift, especially right now as things start to get busy, to really focus on, okay, I can not multitask, instead I can time block. There's some tips in there on like how to control using your screen or using your phone so you actually wake up with better focus than it drawing your it we have to be very intentional with some of the things that we start our day with.
Yes, we do. So, do you have a favorite piece of advice for a young mom still coming into her household management?
My advice would be to rest on the idea that God did not create motherhood to be stressful and chaotic. The messaging that we see in culture that like you need caffeine and wine or whatever it is to survive, and I don't buy that at all. I don't believe, in fact, I feel like a rebel when I say things like this because I don't believe it at all, because I don't think that's what God doesn't create like that. Does it feel stressful at times? Absolutely. Are there days where, like I said earlier, whack-a-mole, like I get one nail down and the other one's like jumping up? It's wild, but I think if we are better stewards with our time and we take some of these things, like I said, this is the only career where we're thrown into it without given any direction as to how to manage the task and the time. We just kind of like, okay, clean the house, take care of your kids, maybe homeschool them, make sure they get, like, we rattle off this list, never giving moms the opportunity to know how. And that, like, if you can create some structure in your day and follow that through, it just makes for your kids feel that too. It doesn't
Oh,
mean
yes.
chaos goes away. It's still like, I don't really, and like hot mess mom culture, I'm not a fan of even saying hot mess, like that I'm a hot mess. I
No.
don't believe that. Everything's about decisions, and we get to curate our home and we get to decide. And I think that's what every mom should really look at, is scheduling, looking at your time and decisions and how you're deciding.
Being a good steward as a mom.
Hmm.
Well, I'm going to end with the Bible verse. I'm
Okay.
going to end with 1 Corinthians 14:40. But all things should be done decently and in order. Thought that was a good close for today, just because today was a really just simple conversation, but I think moms need to hear it sometimes. It's about
Hmm.
valuing the process of running your household. It's finding the ways to time block, to declutter, to manage it all in a way that releases the stress instead of brings on more.
Hmm.
So just value, order, do what you can, and have grace in the moment you can't.
Hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
Anna, I will link to either your IG or a website, something for our audience to keep track of you. And thank you for coming on today. It was good
Thank you for
chatting with
having me.
you.